everybody. Good morning. This is Jackie Luqman.
And I'm Shitholegate Luqman.
And this is a very special impromptu. Hey, there he is.
Yay.
This is a very special impromptu edition of Live and Coffee Current Events and Politics because obviously of Shitholegate. Oh my God. I don't even know what to say about the comments other than, why are you surprised? Not surprised. I'm not surprised this president said these things. You shouldn't be surprised because this is pretty typical of American policy toward brown countries. I said these things. How are you shocked when this president characterizes brown countries as shithole countries when, as a course of foreign policy, we've bombed the hell out of and destroyed lots of brown countries over the past 40 years. And that's what's created this huge immigration so-called crisis that we have now, right? It doesn't matter that nobody else maybe, because I don't even believe that's true. I don't even believe it's true that other politicians have never said this about, Latin American and African countries. I'm sure that some of them absolutely have, but even if nobody else had said, oh, these are all shithole countries, the way we treat these countries have been an indication of what we think of them. Like when we can take a country like Libya that was the most affluent and prosperous and educationally advanced and advanced for women's rights.
Yeah, very progressive.
Very progressive for women's rights. One of the most advanced and progressive countries in Africa that was made that way by Muammar Gaddafi. When we take a country like that and we bomb it to hell and create, and basically now it's a crater. I don't know how we can do that and say that we have any kind of respect for African people, for Gaddafi, for Libyan people. So if that's what we do to stable African nations, how is that not an indication that we think those are shithole countries?
I agree.
Yeah, that's just me, but what do you got to say?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the part of the world where the sun is shining or not shining. But we thank you for joining us this morning. Yeah, we had to weigh in on this because once again, we hate to say we told you so.
No, we don't.
No, that's being polite. But yeah, we did. We told you so. We told you that Trump is a racist. Those of us who have been following Trump for decades, Trump's been in the spotlight. A lot of people don't understand that. But if you're a certain age, Trump's been part of your life in some way for the last 30 years, and this is consistent Trump. This is consistent Trump. This is not abnormal for him. Look, we took you back on this show about the Central Park 5, I believe, up in New York City back in the, I think, maybe late 80s, early 90s. And where, 5 young men were accused of sexually assaulting a jogger, a white female jogger. And it was, they said he didn't do it, but then, once you go through the New York City Police Torture Department, liable to say anything. And so these young kids, and it's been documented that these kids were coerced into, saying that they did it, and in actuality they didn't do it. And so Trump just took this to heart, and he went out and he started getting taking out large page ads in the newspaper calling for their execution and this and that and the third. And then after these guys that served like a decade in prison, some even a little longer, found out that there was actually somebody else who did it. And DNA didn't link none of the guys to the crime. And they actually found the guy who actually done it. So once these guys were exonerated, did you think that Trump would come out and say, "Look, I'm sorry, I apologize, for calling for your heads. I should have just let justice play out"? Because isn't that what we're always told as black people when we're angry about something? Let the system do its job. But so he never said none of that. And so what happened is that the state had to pay them. The city had to pay them for false, for just the way they done them. Trump was against that. He was actually against it. In fact, Trump still maintained that they were guilty in spite of the evidence. Trump still maintained that they were guilty.
He took out a full page ad saying that their settlement with the city was the biggest theft.
Yeah, that's what he said. Now here's a guy who, how you think he got his billions from stealing from people? But yet he said that the legal settlement for the Central Park 5 was the biggest theft that he has ever seen. I guess he hasn't seen much. So this is consistent Trump. Trump's, this whole racist, and I read somewhere where they said that one of the reasons why, that he's just comfortable. And see, that's another thing, that you're comfortable around people saying it. Somebody on CNN, Jackie shared a link with me, where this guy, one of his apologists, was sitting up here saying, "Oh, well, this is like, sitting around the kitchen table talk." Well, if this is, your kitchen table talk is you. I mean, if what he's trying to say to me is that, okay, your kitchen table, you're relaxed, and you're more relaxed, so you're not always on guard about what you say. How is that? How is that any better? Like your kitchen table talk is you. It comes out of you. It's no different than that. But I wanted to go back to Jackie's comment about, there's no respect. She brought up a good point. You brought up a good point, hon, about Libya. Let's look at every country the United States has intervened in.
How much time?
I mean, like within the last, let's say within the last, all right, we don't have to go all the way far back. The last 30 years. Mm-hmm. Let's just go back 30, 35 years, and let's look at every country that the United States has intervened militarily, economically, and let's look at them today. Do you see a success story today? I would dare say that you don't. The United States is good at turning successful states or semi-successful states into, or even shitholes, into failed states. I mean, there is not, if you look back 30 years, and I'm saying, I have not seen a successful country that the United States has intervened in that benefited from U.S. intervention. They all became failed states.
Yep. And I mean, the interesting thing about the shitholes comment that Haitians, why do we need Haitians here? Get them out. Why do we need Africans here? Why are we, bringing all these people in from these shithole countries? Especially talking about Africa and African nations, first of all, as someone finally pointed out to the Trump apologist on CNN last night. I actually watched CNN, Don Lemon's segment on CNN Tonight last night. I don't usually. But I just happened to watch because I wanted to see how the conversation was going to go. And to Don Lemon, I don't know what happened to Don Lemon, but Don Lemon kind of threw away his neoliberal card, I guess.
Right.
And he was just like, no, this is racist. So we'll put the clip up. But just the fact that that somebody has to point out that Africa is not a country, first of all.
That's not. That's right.
Just and there are countries within Africa. There are nations within Africa. But what was interesting that people didn't talk about on CNN last night in relation to Africa being called a shithole country by Trump. Africa isn't such a shithole that the United States doesn't want to put thousands, well, not thousands yet, but hundreds of military bases across Africa. Do you know that there are hundreds of U.S. military bases and maneuvers.
And they're still increasing.
And they are increasing right now in Africa. There are United States servicemen and women deployed to military bases that have been built, that are being built, and they are carrying out military drills and maneuvers of the type that we know nothing about in Africa, the shithole, right now.
Right.
So we don't. So according to Trump, and his base, and let's just dispense with this lie that the only people who think like this are people who voted for Trump. Let's just dispense with that right now.
And I'm glad you're saying that because I want to respond to what we've seen so far. The very the liberal progressive response to Trump, which to me is just as troubling.
Oh,
but we'll talk about that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. We need to get our y'all need to get y'all stuff straight. But let's just dispense with this idea that only crazy racist people who voted for Trump think like this. We shared an article with you guys a while ago, not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, from Politico magazine, explaining the history, the long history of regular old working class white voters who have more in common economically and socially with black workers, but who consistently vote along racial lines, meaning they will vote for white people who express politics and policies that will benefit white interests. As soon as a white politician says, well, we're going to do something because we see the plight of black people being more dire than anybody else, even working class white voters who are struggling just as much as black folks, they may not suffer racial discrimination, but economically, that y'all near the bottom too. But as soon as a politician says, we recognize that black people really need some justice and equality, working class white voters historically vote against politicians who advocate policies that will help black people. Historically, we're not making this up. It's from a Political article. We'll share it again. But let's just dispense with this idea that it's just crazy white people, crazy racist white people who think that these countries are shitholes. The reason we haven't been able to have real, true racial justice in this country is because more than half of regular white America really doesn't give a crap about black people in this country and anywhere else in the world. How do we know that? What did we do to Libya? What did we do? What did we do to Iraq? There was a big anti-war movement in Iraq, but what happened to it? What did we do? What did we do when we found out what the United States did in Honduras?
I mean, what they continue to do in Iraq and Afghanistan.
What we continue to do in Iraq and Afghanistan.
I mean, what we're doing right now, we just, yesterday, they had a demonstration in D.C., and here we are coming up on Martin Luther King's birthday, which is why this Shitholegate is really embarrassing to a country that's about to celebrate a figure like Dr. Martin Luther King. But here we are. Yesterday they had a very they had a demonstration downtown, which was about the detainees, the kidnapped, because that's what they are now. The kidnapped people in Guantanamo Bay. Some of them been there almost 20 years without being charged, without a trial. They are still bringing people to Guantanamo Bay. Don't believe that lie that they're not. They're still bringing people there. These people, for the most part, have not had due process of law. And so I view it, and many others view it, as the United States is committing war crimes. They circumventing the Geneva Convention on how to treat prisoners of war. All of this stuff. The United States just violating treaties all the way around. And so, again, we're really dealing with not just the character of this person, Trump, but we really need to look outside of Trump and realize that Trump was groomed here. He was groomed in the United States. Trump is a symptom of this disease of racism, which has entrenched itself in this country. the people who are not confused about, or who are not shocked, I should say, about Trump's remark are Trump supporters. They're not shocked. They're not shocked about it at all. They understood where Trump was coming from. All we had to do was watch all the campaign rallies of where when he every time when he wasn't making good points on policy, then he knew that all he had to do to stoke the flames was start talking about Mexicans, a wall, and all this stuff. So they understood where he was coming from, and they voted for him for that. But again, as you said, Jackie, we have to understand that this is nothing new. Trump, this is who Trump is, and what really bothers me is the fact that how the apologists come out. These so-called apologists, the same apologists that when we talk about our pain, when we talk about injustices that happen with us, the same apologists that come out and want to explain why the Civil War wasn't really fought over slavery, and all of this kind of stuff, man. And I put something on my page real quickly, is that maybe Trump doesn't know this, and maybe most Americans don't know this, but the Norwegians don't want to come here. They don't want to come here. And I'm going to give you a quick story. This is a true story. When I lived in New Jersey, I used to work for the Hilton Hotel. And of course, if you do any type of hotel work, you understand that those type of industries usually attract immigrant workers. And so I worked with people from Africa and Haiti and Jamaica and parts of Latin America. And I remember having a conversation with a African from Ghana, but he was actually a Norwegian citizen. And so when he was telling me the story of when he was coming to America, and he was on the flight to America on a Norwegian Airlines, and so the stewardess, having a little bit of chit chat, they asked him, well, where are you going? He said, I'm going to America, and well, what's your business there? Well, I'm going to live there. I'm going to apply for citizenship. And what really fascinated me was when he said her response was she looked at him and said, why? Why would you want to go there? Now that was lost on me then. This was going back maybe almost 20 years ago. That was lost on me then. But now when I think about it, the Norwegians have a much better society than we do as Americans. And so, they don't want to come here. Trust me. They don't want to come here. They have it good. They have it better with that. And as I stated on my post, they look at our country as a shithole.
It's like, what? Why? Yeah. Why would you want? I mean, Norway, from what I understand, has universal health care.
Oh, they do.
And they have free secondary education.
Yep.
Why? Why would anybody from a country?
Their crime rate is a lot lower than ours.
And see the ethno-nationalists.
Oh, I know. Because they're all white, and
because they're a homogenous society. Because it's only mostly white people there. There are a few black people there, but it's mostly white people there. I'm gonna tell y'all, I've been telling y'all, some of y'all progressives who fell in league with these ethno-nationalists, you stupid people who don't even know what words mean. You're talking about, we can work with them for Medicare for all, and you're basically working with a bunch of baby neo-Nazis who celebrate and want to create a society with only that focuses and panders to and really is created for one ethnic group. And if that ethnic group is not white European, then those people are left out. That's what ethno-nationalism is. But some of y'all got so caught up with some of the celebrities, the YouTube celebrities that were ethno-nationalists that this person did shows with, and look, they agree with us on Medicare for all. No, they agree with you on Medicare for all for people who do not look like us.
Right.
They don't want us to get shit. So please, for those of you who are still entertaining ideas that you can work with ethno-nationalists and the alt-right, go away. Please, because you are going to get us killed.
But let me ask you a question, though, because this raises some really disturbing points. A very disturbing point, hon. I like watching Nazi documentaries.
You do like watching the World War II stuff.
I love watching Nazi,
it is fascinating.
Yeah, I love watching Nazi documentaries and all of that stuff. And I'm fascinated with the Nazis because I believe that they, we could learn a lot from them. And they, I mean, they're really a very unique example in modern human history of the Nazi period of Germany. Where so many things have taken place and so many things negatively came out of that. And one of the things that you find consistent with Nazi ideology and things that happen here is that this whole notion of superior and inferior people. Because when I look at Trump's statement about Norway, why did he have to choose Norway? Why didn't he say China? After all, Asians are supposed to be hardworking. Why didn't he? Why didn't he say, the Irish? Why didn't he say, he could have used anything, but he said Norway. And Norway it's funny because Norway is like the white supremacist example of superior white people.
Yeah, Norway and Sweden.
Nordic, yeah, Norway and Sweden, Nordic. Blonde eye, blonde hair, blue eyes, and this whole idea of what perfect white people look like, because not all white people are equal in the sight of racists. So it's like what perfect white people are, and and the creme de la creme, right? Is that what they say? And so it's mighty funny how, because I always look at what people say and the words they use, and it's like, wow, he said Norway. He didn't say Poland.
Right.
Yeah. He didn't say
he didn't say Yugoslavia.
Yeah, or Belarus or something like that. No, he said Norway. And so because that means a lot to me, because I watch so many Nazi documentaries, and I can't help but have the picture in my mind of the Nazi propaganda of these old pictures of the Nordic male and female, and this is whatever, this is the superior people. And yet on the other hand, you have these grotesque caricatures of so-called inferior people, whether they were Jews or people of color, and the racists go out of their way to make these grotesque drawings and all of these crazy stereotypes and all this stuff. And you guys know what I'm talking about. And so, I mean, I see all of this in Trump's statement. I see this reference to Norway as a symbolic of, we want those type of people,
right?
Good white folks, we want them. And then the Haitians and the Africans, because he named them too, and those we don't want, And so when does it become? Because Jackie and I just watched a documentary called Hitler's People.
That was fascinating.
That was very fascinating. And just for a brief background on the documentary, if some of you haven't seen it, this was a documentary based on the results of the United States Army psychiatric or psychological warfare unit.
Yeah.
Yes, they had a psychological warfare unit. And their job, after the Germans lost the war, their job was to actually go in and try to understand how the Germans fell for the okie doke, and how Hitler and how they allow Hitler to really lead them into to a path of destruction. And I mean, the data was fascinating. I mean, when they had these personal interviews with people, one of the things that, if you ever watched the documentary, one of the things that was noticeable is that nobody would identify themselves as a Nazi.
Yep.
That was number one. Like over here, I'm not racist, I'm not prejudiced, I'm not this. But once they started to probe them further, then they started to find out that they had digested so much or internalized so much of Nazi ideology that even though they didn't consider themselves Nazi, they either supported Nazi programs or they started to subscribe to a lot of the belief systems, the racist belief systems of the Nazi. And this even included clergy. And this one was so fascinating. This included even clergy. And so you can't help but look at that and see the parallels to this country too. To the fact where most folks would say, I'm not racist, or I don't have anything against people of color, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. But once you start to see their actions, and once you start to see who they support, most of the Trump supporters said that, I'm not racist, it's not about race. That's all we hear all the time. But yet, once you start to probe and see how they vote, what they say, what they do, what policies they support, then you realize that, oh yeah, it's not, you might not consider yourself a racist, but you damn sure internalize a lot of racist and ideology.
Yep.
So all of these things matter, and all of these things connect. And so if any of you get a chance, look at Hitler's People, and it would really give you an insight to, and see, one of the things why it's so important, because the largest support of Nazism outside of Germany was in the United States.
Oh,
the United States had the largest Nazi followers outside of Germany here.
That's right.
So, that shows you that, we have some serious demons to confront.
Oh, yeah. I mean, people don't understand. This is why history matters. This is why this history, it's one thing for people to say, oh, well, this is how Nazi Germany happened. Not quite. This isn't quite how Nazi Germany happened. This is, you need to understand, Hitler didn't win an election and all of a sudden open concentration camps. That's not how it happened. Hitler actually was in power for 10 years. And he was actually, I'm going to try not to get too much into the history behind it, but I really want people to understand, you really need to know history. You don't have to be an expert on it, but you really have to make learning the history of how these major world events happened in order to understand why we are where we are now. Because if you don't know these things, they not only can happen again, they will happen again. So, Hitler was just building off of anti-Semitic sentiment from the 1800s that was already existing in Germany from World War I. But he blamed the economic collapse of Germany on the Jews, when really the economic collapse of Germany was because of the United States stock market crash. Why is that important? Because after World War I, Germany was basically financed by the United States. And when our stock market crashed, then Germany didn't get any more money. So Germany's recession happened because of the United States recession.
Right.
But Hitler blamed it on the Jews. This is another interesting thing, a very important thing about that history to point out. And this is why the whole ideology that a lot of progressives have with working with people who are racists is so insulting. Because Hitler did not start his pogroms, his campaign of concentration camps and imprisoning people who disagreed with Nazism with the Jews. No, he began with Germans. He began with Germans who were democratic socialists. He began with Germans who were communists. Kristallnacht didn't happen the day after Hitler was elected chancellor. No, he started with imprisoning people who did not subscribe to Nazism.
Oh, I just wanted you to show real quick.
This is a it went away. I'm gonna have to find it to you. I'll find it for you. But I mean, see, so do you? I hope you understand how these kinds of comments that Donald Trump makes, you cannot look at them in a vacuum. This isn't like, oh, this is one isolated crazy ass white guy we got in the White House. No, this is the result of an entire history that we've ignored in this country. That's why Donald Trump is in the White House talking about, why are we letting people in from shithole countries? Because Donald Trump's father was a member of the Klan. That's why Donald Trump's comments about, well, we like people from Norway. That's why Norway is important. People are, looking at the fact that he said Norway, and people actually respond and say, well, no, it's not about race. It's about economics. When you know that for white supremacists, like you said, people of Nordic descent, the Norwegians, the Scandinavians,
Well, slavery was about economics too.
Well, yeah.
So that, I mean, come on, slavery was about economics.
That's but unless you understand the significance of countries like Norway and Scandinavia to white supremacist ideology, of course, him saying that why can't we get people like Norway in this country doesn't mean anything to you. That's why you have to pay attention to these kinds of things. I mean, his apologists coming in and saying it's all about economics. When you understand that whenever people made a case against slavery and for reparations because of slavery, and whenever people say, well, look, the Civil War was all about slavery, I don't care what else they say, what do people always say? No, it was about states' rights and economics.
Right.
That whole economics argument is nothing more than a deflection from focusing on the actual issue of racism and slavery. That it just seriously is. And if you never want to hear about black issues, you'll never understand the significance of that.
And,
right?
You brought up a good point about because we were talking about the so-called liberal response to Trump's comments. And you brought up a good point, Jackie, when we were talking about Senator Durbin. Now, he's out here, patting himself on the back, because he was in that meeting. I think he was, right? He was in the meeting.
Oh, yeah, he was in the meeting.
Yeah, Democrat Senator Durbin. Is it Dick Durbin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dick Durbin.
Dick Durbin. Sounds like a bad cowboy name, Dick Durbin. Well, anyway, Dick Durbin was in that meeting. And so now, he's out here and he's getting press conference and patting himself on the back because, he's appalled by what Trump has said and, But you made a good point, Jackie, where you said, okay, fine. All right, he didn't like what Trump said, but he never left the meeting.
Right.
And this segues into my frustration with the progressive response to this. I have yet to hear. We're coming up on Martin Luther King's birthday, or a holiday. I don't think it's his actual birthday, but holiday. And Martin Luther King once said, that speech we all love, about people being judged by the content of their character, not based on skin color. And we also know about what Martin Luther King's opinion of the so-called white liberal was too. But this is my point. I watched CNN today, and I watched a very passionate young Caucasian woman, and very passionate. I believe that all her intentions were sincere in responding to this a-hole that was on Don Lemon's show, who was trying to apologize for Trump. But the way that she responded to this guy,
oh my God,
is what frustrates people of color with some of our white allies. Because there is a hard racism and there's what I call soft racism. That soft racism that that the person themselves are not even aware of, that you don't see me any better than Trump. And so what she said was, in her response to Trump's xenophobic comments, she said to the guy, well, how dare you say that Latin Americans don't bring a contribution to America? Who do you think makes your bed when you go to a 5-star hotel? Who do you think do this and do that? And even though they are low skilled, that's what she said, even though they are low skilled, they still come here and they give their best. And I'm just sitting here, man, and I just threw the pen at the wall. Now, mind you, like I said, I'm not saying that she she wasn't sincere and passionate in trying to combat this guy. But this is the same problem that Rosie Perez had with Kelly Osbourne on The View, when in Kelly Osbourne's white elitist way was trying to defend Latinos against Trump. And she said, who's going to clean your toilets? if he builds the wall, who's going to clean your toilets? Right. And, and Rosie Perez had to look at her and like, yo, you relegated all of us down to, this is the importance we have in this country. It's like cleaning your toilets.
Cleaning your toilets.
Yeah, I mean, so there's this other kind of soft racism where in actuality, you don't see a lot of so-called well-meaning white folks, and other folks too, but it's mostly white progressive liberals who mean well, but are still chained by the way that they see people of color too. You know, and you know, so the response that I saw from this young woman on CNN, I was like, man, that is a bad response to this because it's racism too.
Yup, it is. I mean, that was a shitty response.
It was a shitty response.
It really just, you know, these people are sitting there talking about, well, who do you think is gonna serve your food, and who do you think? How do we know that as a matter of policy that America treats people from brown countries as if they're all shitholes, when you have people from African nations, from Middle Eastern countries, who have degrees, and sometimes advanced degrees, driving cabs and working in the food industry or in the hospitality industry, because in this country, even though somebody has earned an advanced degree in engineering in Uganda, that degree is not recognized as worth the paper that it's written on here, because we don't think their system of education is on par with ours. That's how I know that regardless of whether anybody else has publicly said that these people are coming from shithole countries or not, that's how we know we really do think they are that way. When we have a whole contingent of people who are immigrants from other countries who are educated, who do have degrees, they're not all just the least educated people on the planet. And seriously, who cares? If people want to work, then I thought hard work. I thought hard work was the American mantra. But if unless someone has a degree from an Ivy League institution here in the United States, or an Oxford or Cambridge in the UK, then as far as we're concerned, from a European approved institution, then as far as we're concerned, they're not really educated. That's treating people who come from these countries like their countries are shitholes. Trump didn't have to say this. This has been the policy. This is the way we've treated immigrants who come to this country for a very long time. All presidents have. Every administration has. That's, again, why you have cab drivers who are engineers and chemists. And doctors and nurses with degrees, driving cabs and bussing tables. And yes, because they're brown people with funny names, with funny accents, and we don't want to mess with them. So, I mean, so that kind of narrow, xenophobic, like you said, it's that soft racism of some well-meaning white liberals that says that's how you see these people from these countries too. And if this is how you see all of these people from these countries, I know how you see us. I know how you see Black Americans. See, I mean, when you are really honest about what these kinds of comments say and what the responses to these comments really say, you cannot help but get right back around to the fact that America has never dealt with its own racism. Never, ever. In any comprehensive, real, honest way. Not even the well-meaning white people. Funny that you brought up Dick Durbin.
Dick Durbin.
You know, what would have been great if I have to get back to that point. I need to make sure I get back to that point. And I have to make sure I don't let all my goodies show, because we're still, we decided to do a stream this morning in the pajamas, because we could not sit on this, because this weekend is full of activity. But we couldn't let this pass. So the headline that would have been great, and that would have made me respect Democratic lawmakers, or any of them, Democratic, Republican, I would have respected any lawmaker if the headline from this meeting would have been, lawmakers storm out of meeting with Trump because he refused to apologize for racist remarks, calling other countries shitholes.
Right.
I would have respected these people if that had been the headline from this meeting. But that wasn't the headline. So, Trump came out this morning and tweeted on the toilet like he usually does that he didn't say these awful things, right?
Never said that.
And Dick Durbin does a press conference and makes a big deal. He's very sober and serious, and yes, and he goes down the timeline and makes it very clear that Trump did say these things. But at no point did Dick Durbin say, and when I said to the president, Mr. President, that's some shit. I can't believe you said that.
Right.
Sir, that is unconscionably racist and insulting. I demand that you retract those statements, or I am getting up from this table right now and I am calling the press. I am calling the press corps down the hall. That didn't happen.
But look at the response, and it's funny that people like Dick Durbin and the so-called well-meaning people that's supposed to be on our side, look at how they can tolerate Trump's racist remarks, and how Democrats have tolerated a lot of Republican racist remarks and policies and make excuses for it. But when Kaepernick knelt,
oh Jesus, he's burning down the flag.
I mean, when black NFL players protested,
sons of bitches,
right, they should be boycotted. They should, they should be fired. All of this vitriol, hostile actions towards black people, and just recently in the headlines, when I mean recently, I'm talking about within the last year, black athletes who have taken a stand against racism. And the backlash that was getting, not just from the white politicians and people like Trump, but also from a lot of white Americans who felt that black people should just shut up and do what they were born here to do, which is to entertain us. Can't work them up for free anymore, so just entertain us. You can at least do that, right? So the thing of it is that, and so here again, it was all of this backlash against black protests. Now you have yesterday, which I found really interesting, is that the first response the White House gave when this leaked out was not an apology to the people that Trump obviously offended. Rod Shaw, who I don't think is a white guy, Rod Shaw, who's on the president's staff, wrote this long, as my wife say, word salad. I like that.
The bullshit word.
This long word salad, trying to put some, trying to make sense out of this stuff that out of these racist remarks that Trump said. I can't remember everything, but one of the things I will say is that he tried to say, oh no, it's not about race. Trump was, he had said from the beginning that he was against a broken immigration policy, and this economically affects the United States negatively, blah, 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 blah. But it was so long, you knew it was bullshit.
Yep.
It was so long. It was like, yeah, man, you are going in your bag of tricks, trying to pull out everything to try to put some to sprinkle sugar on this stuff. And it's just so bad because when I saw the name, I said Rod Shaw. Okay.
R-A-J.
R-A-J S-H-A-H, right? I said, yeah, he's not a white guy. But the thing of it is that once again, and I'm surprised that Sarah Huckabee, I haven't seen it, I'm surprised that she, she probably did, that she didn't stagger to the podium and, and hike up her stockings that's always falling down and twirling with her hair and stuff and talk about, well, in that awkward way of hers. But again, it's like you see the difference. It's like this type of racism, when it's directed at people of color, is sort of tolerated. Oh, I'm outraged, but I'm not going to leave the meeting. I'm outraged, but but we have to find a way to respond to this president. As opposed to when black people protest, then all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, they just trying, So this is something that, again, that, that I see the difference in, even with Dick Durbin's response. He's patting himself on the back. I was there. And like what the president said, but you're right. I mean, why didn't he just leave? You know,
Right.
why didn't he just just leave the meeting? But once again, that's the Democratic Party for you. You know,
and honestly, that's the Republican Party too. Because I mean, like I said, I would have respected any and every politician. You know what would have been the perfect indication that these politicians really do not stand for or with, this crap that's coming from Trump's mouth. What would have been perfect was if they were outside of whatever room they were meeting in, and there were a bunch of them standing there, Republican and Democrat, and somebody was saying, we just left this meeting with President Trump. And we left this meeting because he made some comments about countries, black and brown countries, that we find insulting and unconscionable, and as Americans, we don't stand for those comments. And out of all due respect for the office, we will not stay in the presence of anyone, not even the President of the United States, who makes comments disparaging people of any nation in that way, and certainly not our allies and people whose family members we have welcomed into this country. But no, that's not what they did. They sat in that meeting, they listened to what that man said. They might have nervously looked at each other and twiddled their thumbs and thought in their heads, oh, that's it. This is gonna be a shit show.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure that they were, personally in some kind of turmoil. But the only thing that is required, the only thing that's needed for evil to succeed is for good people to do nothing. Honestly, you don't need a Hitler in order for evil to flourish. You just need a bunch of good German people or a bunch of good Americans who filled up Madison Square Garden, filled it, sold it out for the largest Nazi rally outside of Germany. And for the rest of the country to say, hey, it's a free country. People can believe what they want.
Right. Yeah.
So these people, these politicians and these pundits making all kinds of excuses for the garbage that Trump said, they're not only wasting my time, and I hope they're wasting yours too. It's just, there is no defending what this man said. There's no defending it. There isn't a defense of it on the planet. It is what it is. It is racist. As much as I'm not a fan of CNN, I give Don Lemon all kinds of respect for the way he handled the segment that we're going to give you a link to from last night. We got serious problems.
Now, I'm sorry to cut in, but now we're just because we got the news on. Yeah. Trump signs proclamation in honor of MLK Day. See, this is all the cover my ass type stuff.
And see, this is what makes me angry. I wish I could connect the laptop to CNN for you to see. See, this is why Jacqueline can't run for politics. That's why I can't get in politics.
I wanted to read some of the comments.
Oh, okay, please do.
All right, Gustavo Ruiz.
Gustavo.
He said, on the eve of MLK weekend and Remembrance Day, can you guys speak about where are the Black and Hispanic leaders that should be tweeting louder, that should be carrying our vision and hope to make change instead of letting us feel with anxiety every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Thanks, fam. I mean, you're going to get us kicked off of, because, I mean, our audience already thinks that we go too long. You throwing that at us, Gustavo, man. I mean, but thank you for that comment. Again, I was just getting ready to ask Jackie about, have we heard anything from the CBC? Have we heard anything from, as you say, Black and Hispanic leaders? I'm not going to sit up here and say with a surety that they haven't said anything. I just haven't been aware of it yet. But I like what you said, that it could be louder, because so far the only people that I'm seeing responding to this are white Democrats and white progressive activists or liberals outside. Haven't seen much Black people except for the regular Black pundits that I see on the talk show circuit.
Right.
So yeah, you're right. They should be. And this has been our dilemma as people of color in this country, is the fact that it is very hard to find people who stand up unapologetically for us, without any, without any kind of compromise, and that's been our dilemma. We speak about this a lot on our show. Carl, let me see if I see something else.
Oh, Carl Steeren.
Carl Steeren, yeah. He said Madison Square Garden, the largest Nazi rally outside of Germany. And he said that takes him back. I was only born in 1944, but my dad, an immigrant from Germany in 1930, told me about going to a German American Technical Society in Chicago in the late 1930s. Dad was a chemist and being greeted by a Heil Hitler. This was in America,
This was in the
He
United
was so
States.
angry that he shouted at them, walked out, and never went to another of their meetings. Thank you, Carl, for giving us that piece of personal history. Because that's what we've been trying to say, that this is nothing new in this country. That so many Americans, white Americans, identify with the Nazis during that time, during the Nazi era. It's frightening, But again, we have this long history in this country, and as Gustavo reminded us about us coming on the eve of Dr. Martin Luther King's holiday, the fact that my God, I think that God takes some of our best people so they don't have to view this shit. People that have fought so hard and so passionate. We look at death as a bad thing sometimes, and I don't mean to go off track. But what I'm saying is that it probably was merciful that Martin Luther King's not here to see this. I can imagine how heartbroken he would be. I can imagine how heartbroken Malcolm X and a lot of others, Medgar Evers, a lot of others who fought, Fannie Lou Hamer and all the rest of them, who fought so hard to see justice done in this society, to come this far and see that we have someone still in the White House that is reminiscent of Woodrow Wilson back in the turn of the century.
Right.
That we still have these racist ideology and these racist overtones still being displayed in the top offices in the top office in this country and in the most powerful position in the world. So we just have a lot of work to do, and I wanted to say one thing about folks, I have to tell you, you can't see this, but here is the obligatory let me surround myself with a bunch of black ministers. No. This is what this is. Let me go to my black people. What do you say?
Look at my African Americans.
Yeah,
look at him.
Let me go to my African Americans. Look, you need to help me out. Come here. I'm under fire. I want to sign this proclamation. Please surround me. Now, here's the photo op. It says Trump honors MLK Jr. amid racist remark controversy. And what does he do? Pencils in the back.
Pencils in the back.
Pencils in the back.
Ben Carson on one side. I don't know who this other guy is. I don't know who
the other guy is. But anyway, see, this is how they do. This guy is not sincere. But this is what they do.
And let me tell you something. We'll give you a link to this too. It's on CNN right now. I can't take Trump's voice. I'm sorry, I just can't. There are some black people in the little audience here because it's inside the White House, and there's a small audience of people. Whenever politicians honor Martin Luther King Jr., and I think this might go back to Gustavo's comment. Whenever politicians, white and black, honor Martin Luther King's legacy, they always talk about how he was a man of love and he was a man of unity, and they always talk about his I Have a Dream speech. These people never talk about his letter from the Birmingham jail. These people never talk about his Poor People's Campaign. These people never talk about his absolute and repeated contention that imperialism, capitalism, and racism.
Yeah, militarism.
And imperialism, militarism, and racism were the three pillars, evil pillars, on which this American society was destroying not just poor brown and black people in this country, but around the world. Right. Martin Luther King Jr. said these things. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy is that he said the progress that we make in this country in regard to racism is completely determined by the federal government, because it was the federal government that created the problem. All right. State and local governments, because it was state and local governments that implemented the problems, and white people. That was Martin Luther King Jr. He said those things. But when we have these things that are going on today, I can almost guarantee you right now, I can almost guarantee you that Donald Trump is not saying anything about those things.
Right.
He's talking about, I have a dream that one day my little children will be able to walk hand in hand with little white children, and they will be judged on the content of their character and not the color of their skin. So for decades, we have allowed people who are not us, who do not care about us, to shape the narrative of who Martin Luther King Jr. was. And we haven't done a good enough job in speaking the truth about who he said he was. So I'm looking at these people standing, and I get that he's the president of the United States, and you want to respect the office, but see me, they'd have to cart me out of that joint. The Secret Service would have to cart me out of there, because I would have taken the mic by now, and everything I just said to you, I would have said then.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now, they get the...
Oh, no, Ben Carson is going to speak. Wait.
Ben is allowed to
Hold
speak.
on. I don't know if we can do this.
Hold on. We're getting ready to end the show, but Ben is getting ready to speak.
To designate the birthplace, church, and tomb of Dr. Martin Luther King
Is there any way that you can tell me
as a
that?
national historic
let's see.
His monumental struggle for civil rights earned
don't
these
think
places
so.
in his life,
Dang
faith,
it.
and death the same honor as Mount Vernon and that famous humble log cabin in Illinois.
Oh, they
This
designated
April,
his
We
birthplace
will
as a
observe
historic.
the 50th anniversary of Dr.
Lord.
King's assassination. I remember so
You know what?
vividly.
I can't take him.
You can't take,
I can't take him.
Let me tell you
No,
something.
because we got to wrap this up.
We got to wrap this show up, but this is the kind of bullshit window dressing that political leaders, black and white, now that's Ben Carson talking. This is the kind of bullshit window
when
dressing.
was the last time they let Ben say anything?
Thank you.
You know?
And then on top of that, designating his birthplace and the church where he preached and his his grave, historical sites up on the same level as Lincoln's birthplace. What does that do for the condition of poor and oppressed black people in this country? Not a damn thing. That's the problem we have.
Right.
That's why when we sit here and we get all emotional about, Donald Trump calling people from calling these countries brown and black countries, these shithole countries, people get all emotional and they respond with these half-baked emotional and ahistorical responses. We leave it at the emotion.
Right.
We talk about the symbolism, but we don't talk about the truth about what's always been going on in this country. We were building bases in Africa before Trump became president. Trump calling Africa a shithole country, that doesn't mean anything. Obviously, there's something in Africa we want. We might not want the people in this country, but we sure want their resources. We sure want their land, because we're building hundreds of bases on the continent. But see, we keep our discussions about racism at our initial outrage and emotional response to the hurtful things people say, and we don't connect any of that stuff to history and policy, and we have to start doing it. Now, to Gustavo's point, yeah, some people are doing that. There are a few of us, and I think we're kind of fortunate to be involved in relationship with some of those people. Mm-hmm. Like if you check out Eugene Puryear's show on Sputnik Radio, he has a daily show, he and Sean Blackman, where they talk about policy issues, things that people on the ground are doing at the local level to advance policies to address issues of systemic inequality and oppression. Check that out. Eugene Puryear, by any means necessary. on Sputnik Radio, and they're on Facebook. Check out Chuck Modi. He's a sports columnist out of, what is it, the New York Daily News, I think. But he frequently tweets on the intersection between sports and racial issues. Great content. Another person who does a lot focusing on the intersection of sports and social justice and racial justice is Dave Zirin. He has a podcast. And he is a regular
Sports
contributor to The Nation. Yeah. He has a show on WPFW. Now the name of his show just ran out of my head. Our good friend and political and social and racial activist down in Atlanta, Georgia, Anoa Shanga, has her show, The Way with Anoa. That girl is fire. That woman is fire. She knows her stuff about politics. And this isn't about, we don't deal with people who are just anti-Democratic Party or anti-Republican Party. This isn't about parties. This is about justice.
And that's just being lazy.
Really, I mean, that's people have gotten on the, yeah, we left the Democratic Party, but our solutions are bigger than any one particular party wants to commit to making. So we have to work with people who are about the work. I don't care who those people are. So yeah, some of the people we work with, we have relationship with, they are in the Democratic Party, but they're in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. We work with people who are Democratic socialists, so we do provide people links to people who are doing this work on our page. That's another one of the things that we use our page and our outlet for, to highlight some of these people and the work that they do. But we can't continue to accept this kind of window dressing. This is Isaac Newton Ferris, Martin Luther King's nephew. This other guy, Lord have mercy.
This is Black Day. I am sure that when Trump, this is Black Day now. And this is what happens every time some white racist step in some shit. They all of a sudden, I can imagine right now that when this stuff started to gain speed, that somebody, because every president has advisors, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure advisor was like, call Ben, call Ben. You need to call Ben. Tell Ben to get down here right now. Who else can you call? And they take out their black Rolodex, or I don't even think they have Rolodexes anymore.
No.
But they have their little
the contact list.
Yeah, the contact list, and they have black names with fire extinguishers on the side. They are the ones that's going to help us put out these racial fires that I started. You know what I mean? So now what happens is you get the press conference. We've seen these plenty of times before. And you get the press conference and they tell the black participants, make sure that your face is real long. That you have a real solemn, serious face. We really prefer pastors, black pastors, but if we can't get them, let's get some black conservatives or somebody like that. But just as long as the face is black, you know what I mean? So and it's supposed to put on this front that I'm not really racist. I have black friends. Look at me, so. And the black folks are supposed to assure us that he's okay. Like Omarosa said, oh, he's not racist. He just says some stupid thing sometimes. Oh, but he's not racist. So the black people are there to kind of like stroke us on the head and be like, no, it's not what you're saying.
Calm down. Don't set anything on fire.
But it is what we're saying. But to end this point, and we thank you guys for staying with us as long that you have. Jackie brought up Don Lemon. And I was thinking about Don Lemon. Because, yes, I noticed that Don Lemon's demeanor has changed since Ferguson and Baltimore, and I watched Don Lemon grow. I consider him growing. I don't consider him going back. Don Lemon, when I first noticed Don Lemon, he was to me, and I don't know the man personally, but this was my opinion of him, was that he was a guy who. Just like a lot of black people that reach, certain stages in this country, he was like, I made it, I did what I had to do, and there's no excuses, and blah 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 blah, and he's homosexual, so he had to struggle with trying to to achieve success, with that. He's open about it. But what I've seen is what I've seen happen so often with black people who reach a certain plateau in this society. And they buy into all of the bullshit. They buy into, as Jackie covered the other day, the 3 norms. And if you do everything right and you just keep your nose to the grindstone and work hard and all this other kind of stuff. What starts to happen is the fact that they actually see that they actually see that it's all a big illusion. Not that they haven't achieved where they have, not that they haven't achieved these things, but even at their level, they start to see that their achievements don't make them it doesn't make them equal in the society. Not equal in the sense that we all should be. And that creates an anger. In fact, I remember maybe about 25 years ago, maybe a little longer, but one of the major publications in this country had a very interesting cover story. And the picture of the cover was a black person who had a mask. And under that mask was an angry face. And I don't know if it was Newsweek, but it was one of those major publications. And they talked about how black people in this country has this seething anger. And it wasn't just poor black people, because everybody knows poor black people are mad. They were talking about the so-called black people who quote, made it. And they were talking about how even black folks who've, quote, made it still have that seething anger because they have not escaped prejudice, racism, and white supremacy in the workplace and where they are. So I see that with Don Lemon. I see that Don Lemon is doing his best to really try to be unbiased because he's a journalist. But I see that. And black folks, we could kind of recognize that in each other. And I see that in his face, that when stuff like this comes out, it basically shatters this American mythos that if you just work hard, if you just keep your nose to the grindstone, then maybe one day that we all could be judged by the content of our character. The anger comes because we see that we're still too far away from seeing that reality.
So, yeah, I know we covered a lot of stuff this morning because a lot has been going on as we've been talking. But please understand that for people who are just now seeing the veil of civility or the veil of equality and justice or the veil of color blindness or the veil of a post-racial society being ripped off of this country, if you are just now seeing it, please understand that there are those of us who have always seen it. And that's why we're so angry. That's why we've always been angry. This is what Martin Luther King Jr. was fighting against. Martin Luther King Jr. and Medgar Evers and Rosa Parks and Ida B. Wells and Frederick Douglass and Nat Turner and John Brown. And it's the same fight. It is the same issue. And we're not going to resolve this issue by issuing presidential proclamations to establish historical sites for murdered civil rights leaders. No, we're not going to address these issues by trying to get people to change their hearts, because see, this isn't a moral issue. I can't control how you feel about me, but what we can control are policies that affect everybody's life. That we can control. That we can do something about. So let's get to be about doing the work of that, of changing policies so that this society is more equal and just for all people. And yes, that includes the dirty R word, reparations. Not going to happen without it. But we're never going to get there if we are not honest about how we got here. So, thank you very, very much. Thank y'all for joining us on this impromptu show this morning. We are going to be in Baltimore at the UNAC anti-war conference for the conference against the proliferation of U.S. military bases around the world. We're going to bring you some content from there. A few of our friends will be speaking. We have a Palestinian activist who will be reciting his spoken word poetry at our church on Sunday. So we are, I think his name is Reza Khan. I think that's his name, Reza Khan. So we'll be bringing you that Sunday morning from our church. And I think if we're still awake after this weekend, we'll have a show Sunday night at 6:30 around 7 o'clock.
And don't forget, on Spreaker.com,
Yep.
every Saturday at 7, Pitbull in Politics.
Pitbull's in Politics.
Starring your boy, me.
Starring him.
Luqman, a.k.a. Abstract Thought. and my boy, Brewski, who's going to be with me. So
Who's asleep back there.
Right. So, that's a podcast that we have on Saturday night, that I have on Saturday night at 7. Pitbull in Politics, Spreaker.com. The first episode is already done. Go on Coffee Current Events in Politics and click on the link, and you can check it out.
Thanks, y'all. Share this video. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. All under Luqman Nation. LuqManNation. Consider becoming a patron of Luqman Nation, because we've got a documentary going on, and also consider contributing to our GoFundMe campaign. Because we've got travel stuff, and this costs money, and we're working people, and we've got a lot of work to do. You can find all of that under Luqman Nation, LuqManNation.
Right.
Thank y'all.
My point is this, real quick.
There's always more.
This is the last point. If you can't ride with us to do the work, then at least pay for the gas.
Oh.
And that's all of us. And you're still doing your part.
Y'all have a great day. Have a great weekend. Be really, really good to each other. Peace.